Boom! We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Today, we will be taking a look at Iowa's official visit weekend coming up, the major one, the major recruits that will be on for the major recruiting weekend. They do have somebody coming on midweek, but the major is obviously this weekend. If you guys haven't noticed, I do have a little bit of a different mic stand situation, but industry secret to me, in my experience, you would be surprised how much the table size, as far as the length and the width of the actual table, actually matters, and the backdrop, how important those things are to your shot and the angles that you're able to utilize for recording. Now, those of you who do have a background in broadcasting or news and stuff like that, I'm sure you guys understand. But for the average person, I'm sure it seems like you can just set it up anywhere, record, and it's all good. No, the table is actually surprisingly important. So, anyways, I digress. This is a major weekend. We're going to look at Iowa's previous results on their official visit weekend. I'm really getting good at this. I've done, I think, 3 previews now. And so some of the things that I'm going to be saying are things that I've said before. And it just is what it is, because it holds true across the years. Now, before we look at the previous years that Iowa has had this, their official visit weekend, to stack it up and see kind of what to expect. Last year, I would say was a abnormally good official visit weekend. Iowa 2 or 3 years ago, we'll see when I pull it up, did poorly in their official visit weekend. I think it was the COVID year. They had a lot of guys on campus, but lost multiple head-to-head recruiting battles that honestly, in any other year, Iowa would have likely have won, because Iowa takes on the approach of slow, consistent, and steady. They don't lay it on thick. They don't pressure recruits like we heard about Minnesota when they pressured Amir Smith-Marset. They have a very slow, methodical approach to recruiting, giving recruits information, making them feel super, super comfortable. And during the COVID year, because and part of that, they utilize, at the end of the day, guys, it comes down to calendars. Okay. They break it down every single year. That's why they call it a recruiting cycle. And they break it. I mean, it is a science, guys. They break it into chunks. They have tailgaters, major recruiting weekends. I don't know if Iowa still does this, but I remember Iowa used to have a major, like, underclassmen barbecue tailgater that was really super successful. I'm sure they still do it, but it was so successful that the recruiting websites would always talk about it. But it's broken up into parts of the year. And so when it comes to the Iowa Hawkeyes, they utilize every bit of the calendar year when it comes to recruiting. And they set it up for recruits to come, become familiar, come to camp, go to a tailgater, come to a game. Then they come for, if Iowa's lucky, 1 or 2 unofficial visits. And then once that recruit is obviously comfortable with Iowa and feels good about them, they have them come for the official visit weekend if they can. Now, obviously, sometimes it's different. It's not always the same for every single recruit, but by and large, that is the approach that Iowa utilizes. And I would say for the most part, it is successful. I mean, obviously, you don't see Iowa landing five-star players here and there, but I don't think that has anything to do with their recruiting approach as much as it does have to do with resources, university prestige, where Iowa is located, things like that. So this is what Iowa does. That is how they recruit. And we're going to take a look at how they have done in the past and kind of see what we should expect for this year. So going back to the COVID year, as I was discussing before I went into Iowa's recruiting approach, they were unable to utilize the entire calendar year because and really get recruits on campus and to camps for Iowa to familiarize themselves with these recruits that they would in other years. And Kirk Ferentz, Tyler Barnes, they ended up commenting on this fact when Iowa did indeed lose multiple head-to-head battles, especially to Iowa State, the likes of Auburn, Wisconsin. I mean, they lost to Illinois. It just was not as successful as they would have liked. The official visit weekend, I believe it was 2022, 2021 or 2022. And so they obviously decided to improve and make it better. Even with the whole COVID thing that they could use as an excuse, Iowa used that as motivation to improve. And last year they dominated. They literally nailed it at like a 95 per, I would say 95 plus percent of the guys who went on official visits last year committed to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa did not get every single recruit that scheduled an official visit because, which I'm going to discuss here in a moment, just because a guy schedules an official visit doesn't mean that they are indeed going to take that official visit with the Iowa Hawkeyes. And I really want to make this point. This is a point that I've made multiple times in the past. Iowa has their official visit late in June, okay? June 23rd, as you guys can see here. And the downside to Iowa having their official visit weekend late in June is that other schools usually have it earlier. They have it sooner. And that means that they get the first crack at landing these recruits. Now, and so Iowa may not even get the chance to sell their program to some of these recruits because they end up committing elsewhere. And if you don't believe that these recruits get pressured by a lot of these programs and say, listen, if you don't commit to us after this weekend, we're going to go elsewhere. We're going to recruit another kid. You're mistaken. Okay. It does happen. Iowa, I don't think does it, but it does happen. Now, Iowa does it insofar as they're upfront about the fact that they only have one scholarship available at the running back position. That happened a few years or 1 or 2 years ago with Titus Krem. Uh, we only have two tight end scholarship positions for this class open. We only have one quarterback scholarship position open. Okay, so they do that insofar as that, but there are other programs that will literally say, regardless of the scholarship thing, they will say, we have gone after you, we've gone hard for you. Either you commit now or we're done. We're moving off of you and we're going to another recruit. And they put a tremendous amount of pressure on these recruits to commit. That's not true across the board per se to 100% of recruits, but it's true to a lot of them. So Iowa may not even get the chance sometimes. Now, on the flip side, the good news is because of how it being late in June that Iowa has their official visit weekend. Usually, Iowa is the last or second to last official visit for that recruit, which means that Iowa gets the final swing. And to me, if a guy has not committed to a school yet by the time they get to the official visit weekend to Iowa, Iowa has the edge because it's the same in business, it's the same across multiple fields. when you get the last chance, you are able to leave the lasting and last impression that is stamped on somebody's mind. And a surprise, I mean, I guess not surprisingly, it works alarmingly well. So, I always say that. I've said that for the last couple of years that this is the case when it comes to Iowa's late official visit weekend. And I said it again today because it just is the case. Look at how successful Iowa was, guys. They literally got every single, especially for the June 23rd, okay? They had 20 official visitors and they landed 19 of these recruits. The only one that they did not get was Xavier Lucas, who ended up committing to Wisconsin. And yes, it would have been nice had Iowa landed him, would have made the class really strong. He would have really rounded out this class, especially at the defensive back position. But still, Iowa did supremely well. I mean, and then usually Iowa has one or two recruits that they have for an official visit weekend outside of their major recruiting weekend. As you guys can see here, Michael Burt went on June 9th, and Iowa was able to leave a good enough impression on him, and he committed to Iowa instead of Nebraska. I don't remember if he visited Nebraska first or if he visited Iowa first. I think he visited Nebraska first, and then Iowa got the chance. So, even with all of this said, regardless, anytime a guy is on campus to visit Iowa, Iowa has a good chance to land it because of Iowa's approach. They're honest, they're transparent, their hospitality is amazing, and they just treat the kids with a ton of respect. June 16th. So yeah, Iowa got the first crack, and he didn't even commit, or he didn't even take the official visit to Nebraska. He went on June 16th, and Iowa had him on campus June 9th. So we're going to look back. So obviously, Iowa did really well last year, but let's look at 2021. And yes, they did lose out to Ohio State for Leroy Royker, which was unfortunate. Iowa took a flyer on him. They were one of the no, I think they may have been the first Power Five school to offer him. Ohio State came in and stole him away, which, Ohio State just doing Ohio State things, which kind of sucks. But, if you're Ohio State and you're like, well, if I was giving him a chance, they must see something in him. He must have something. And, time will tell if Ohio State was correct. So let's look at 2023 here, see how Iowa did. All right, guys. So let's keep it pushing here. Let's look at 2023. Obviously, Iowa did pretty good in this month as well, or this year, excuse me. Some of these guys that are on here did not actually end up officially visiting. The recruiting sites are not perfect at updating it. Like Ryan Mooney did not end up visiting Iowa. I think Iowa moved off of him and slowed down his recruitment a little bit, and they moved off. Uh, Iowa did not land legacy recruit Ismail Smith Flores. They lost him to Nebraska. That happens. Um, they obviously, you know, lost some other battles here. But overall, I think they did pretty good. They didn't do as good as they did the following year, but I think they did fairly good. They didn't get any of these guys. They did land Kendrick Raphael for a time. He ended up decommitting when he saw Iowa's historically bad offense and committing to NC State. They did not land Nolan Ray. He went to Maryland. Iowa was favored to land Christopher Tarrick. He ended up going to Notre Dame. And there's some other guys here, but overall, I think Iowa did good. It wasn't perfect by any means. They didn't land a few of the in-state guys. Kai Black or Jamison Patton. But overall, I think they did good. I mean, look at this. They almost landed Logan Howland, who was a teammate to Marco Lainez, but he committed to Oklahoma. They didn't land Asa Newsome. I think that was probably the highlight of this recruiting class. Is unfortunately Iowa did fairly poorly uh, in the state of Iowa. I mean, if you look at the recruiting rankings here, they lost out on Caden Proctor last minute. And for a minute there, it seemed like it'd be all well and good, but then he went right back to Alabama. They didn't land Andrew DePape. That was not too much of a surprise, as recruiting websites said that he wanted to get out of the state of Iowa. They landed Ben Keeter, but now, which I'm going to do a separate video on him, he is focusing on football, or excuse me, on wrestling, which is not too surprising. A lot of these guys, and I'm going to do a separate video on it, a lot of these guys that play multiple sports, they end up deferring to the other sport. Like, for example, if they play basketball or football and they have a secondary sport like baseball or wrestling, they end up deferring to baseball or wrestling because the guys that play baseball or wrestle don't have they're super athletic, but they're not as athletically gifted as the guys that play basketball and football. And so they're able to take the athleticism that they have for those two sports that are good enough to play at a certain level and really, really make it shine and work playing a different sport. But like I said, I'm going to do a separate video on that. I mean, look at this, guys. I mean, the top 10, Iowa landed two guys, two out of the top 10. They lost David Kolker. He decommitted and went to Iowa State. This dude ended up going to Penn State. They didn't get Asa Newsome. I mean, Iowa really did not do well in this recruiting cycle in the state of Iowa. It was really close. They had a lot of close recruiting battles, but ultimately Iowa State did better. But as far as the official visit weekend goes for this year, I think they did okay, and they had some success. Now let's go. The last one we're going to look at is 2022. It's either 2022 or 2021. I think it is 2022. Now, Iowa ended up landing some really nice pieces due to the strong year that they had. They landed Caleb Johnson, TJ Hall late in the process, Xavier Wanpa, had a really lengthy recruitment. Cohen Entringer, they didn't land this guy. He ended up going to Arkansas State. Uh, Orlando Trader was committed and signed with Iowa, only to at the last minute go to a HBCU. But down here, the major weekend, June 25th, Iowa did disastrously. They missed out on all of these guys, losing major head-to-head battles, losing out on Andrew Keller, who is the teammate of Jack Dotzler. They lost to Illinois for Aiden Laffery. Now, Jacob Bostic was a pretty good recruiting win. They ended up losing out to West Virginia. Landing Brian Allen was a pretty good get. They lost Micah Riley Ducker. They lost to Iowa State for Hunter Deo, who is no longer a part of Iowa State. So sometimes just because they lose a recruiting battle isn't the end all be all, because anything can happen, guys. Just because they're rated 4 stars doesn't mean that they're going to go to college and be what they were in high school. Okay. In fact, the odds say they won't. Okay. So, anyways, that is how they've done in the past. So, as far as this upcoming weekend goes, I think comfortably the expectation, especially if I really take into account where things stand with certain guys. They have 19 guys coming for the official visit weekend, which is pretty normal. Iowa, the past 5 years, has had anywhere between 18 to, I would say, 23 guys. That's the number that they like. So I'll just go one by one and tell you guys what I think is a realistic and what what their target should be. Okay, so Nick Brooks, I'll start right off the bat for him. This is a huge prospect for Iowa. They already had his commitment. They were not able to maintain it. He decommitted shortly after, but he was still heavily considering Iowa. He just wanted to hear other options. I said back then that the primary competition would be Georgia and the SEC, and I was correct. Okay. This guy played high school football. I know he lives in Iowa now, but he played high school football in the state of Georgia. Guys, those are premier, preeminent programs with tons and tons of resources. Okay. And ultimately, Nick Brooks has familial connections in the state of Georgia as well. So I honestly, guys, I've seen it before. I wish I could be optimistic. If I had to do a gut prediction now, I would say Iowa is not going to land him. Also, from what we've heard, the official visit to Georgia went really well for Nick Brooks. Now, what's good for Iowa is he has not committed yet. And after his official visit weekend to Georgia, I remember telling myself, okay, if Iowa can hold him off from committing to Georgia immediately, and they can hold off his commitment until obviously he visits Iowa, they'll have a shot. If they can just hold off this initial excitement of the official visit to Georgia, they will have a shot. So you're saying there's a chance. And that is the case. It looks like Iowa is indeed going to get his official visit, and things will have likely simmered down a little bit as far as the excitement goes. But I just don't. I know this guy has familial connections in the state of Iowa, but I don't think he has that love for Iowa, the University of Iowa, that we see from other in-state recruits, top level recruits, or good recruits in the state of Iowa, where they're like, "Oh, I grew up a lifelong Iowa fan to land at Iowa." I think it's going to be this kid has shown that it's hard for him to shut down his recruitment. I just don't see Iowa landing him. The tea leaves that I'm seeing, I've seen recruitments before. I see how it goes. He reminds me of a guy that really, really enjoys the recruiting process, really enjoys the attention and stuff like that, which is more power to him. That's totally up to him. But those types of guys don't end up usually landing at Iowa. And that's not me saying that he's a bad kid for that. It's not me saying Iowa is wrong for being the type of program that they are. I just know in the past, guys that have shown similar behaviors as Nick Brooks do not end up committing to Iowa. So if I had to give a percentage on it, I would say Iowa has roughly a 30% chance of landing him. I would say Georgia has a 40%, and the remainder is split up amongst the other programs. I think he most recently visited USC. He also has Texas on his short list. I mean, he's got some heavy hitters in on him, which is not surprising. I mean, the dude is a 6'8", 200 or 345-pound offensive tackle. Okay. In a lot of ways, he's very similar to Caden Proctor. USC, Texas, Iowa, and Georgia. That is the main competition here. Okay. And his most recent official visit was to Texas. Let's look at these. Yeah, I just don't see it happening, guys. He just honestly, I'm just being honest, guys. Take it for what it is. He just does not remind me of a guy that usually lands at Iowa. I'm just being honest. Um, but there is still a chance, and nonetheless, Iowa is going to get their chance. Terrence Smith, this is a huge recruiting battle. He is considered a four-star wide receiver by On3, high three-star receiver by 247 Sports. I think Iowa is in the lead for his recruitment. The primary competition for him is Minnesota, but Iowa has been recruiting him the longest. The main thing is Iowa cannot drop the ball here. They have to show him that they will be making changes, that Tim Lester is going to make and that's really going to be the case across the board on the offensive side of the ball. That's going to be the main thing as far as this year goes, and maybe next year, that Tim Lester is going to have to do is he is going to have to convince recruits that he is making changes for the better. That what Brian Ferentz did and what it was the last couple of years is not what it's going to be under him. That is his main burden. And especially at the wide receiver position, he is going to have to sell Terrence Smith that Iowa is going to start utilizing their wide receivers because they notoriously do not. Okay. So I think that they are in the lead for his recruitment. If they land him, they will already have a really, really above average receiving group for this recruiting class, especially considering how poor Iowa has been on offense the last couple of years. And I've told you guys this many times. Iowa has surprisingly recruited well at the wide receiver position, given the lack of offensive stats and firepower the last couple of years. If I had to put a percentage on it, I would say that Iowa has a 60 to 65% chance of landing Terrence Smith. I like Iowa's chances for him. Brock Heath, from Kansas. Iowa obviously has gone to Blue Valley in Kansas. They landed Gavin Hoffman last year and Mason Richmond a few years back. I think Iowa definitely has a shot with him. I think the in-state schools such as Kansas State and Kansas have, at this moment in time, better chances of landing him, but I would not count Iowa out. Okay. Number one, Iowa is in the Big Ten. It's one of the top two conferences in the entire country. Iowa has a history at the offensive line position. He has familial, well, not familial, but he has relationships with guys that are committed to Iowa. I would not count Iowa out. I just would not say that they're the leaders. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm more confident that Iowa can land this kid than I am that Iowa will land Nick Brooks. Okay, I'll put it to you that way. Lucas Algier, very similar in the same vein as Brock Heath. He is highly considering Kansas State and Kansas, some of the schools around the state of Missouri. He is a legacy recruit. I think the main competition for him is probably Kansas State. I would give Iowa a 40% chance with Northwestern having a 50, or excuse me, Kansas State having a 50% chance and Northwestern having a 10% chance. So, but they definitely have a shot. He is not a defensive line. Iowa sees him as a potential offensive lineman, offensive tackle in particular. And I would not be surprised in the least if Iowa is able to land his commitment. Joshua Guerrier. It's hard for me to say his last name. Guerrier, I believe it is. Iowa is recruiting him at the defensive back position. I think Iowa has as good a chance as anybody else. They might not be in the lead, But, as you guys can see, there's the usual suspects, the Iowa State, USF. He's from the state of Florida. I think the school that probably has the best chance is USF. But again, you can't count out the Big Ten and you can't count out Phil Parker. So I definitely give Iowa a good chance. Mason Woods, I would get, but going back to this guy, I'd give Iowa around a 30% chance of landing him. Uh, uh, they're not in the lead, but they're definitely up there with the chance to move into the lead. Mason Woods, Iowa, I feel 99% certain that Iowa's going to land him. I don't think he's taken an official visit anywhere else. Um, the reason why he waited so long to schedule an official visit was obviously because his dad did not get the pay raise and his dad was shopping around his name to NFL teams. And, let's just say it was a family affair. Okay. But obviously, LeVar Woods is back at Iowa. And I think it's highly likely that Mason Woods commits there. Josh Johnson, I don't think he's going to end up taking an official visit. It was kind of crazy. Now, he probably wanted to stay close to home, but this guy visited Penn State and it looked like he was predicted to go to Penn State. And then he chooses Louisville. I was like, are you kidding me? I was not expecting that at all. So I don't think I was going to get his official visit. Cameron Herron from a very popular area in the state of Indiana, a place that area that has been good for the Iowa Hawkeyes, the Indianapolis area. Cameron Herron, I think Iowa is in the lead for his recruitment. The primary competition for him, I would say, I think it's Boston College or West Virginia. Northwestern is also in on him. They also got a official visit May 10th, but I think Iowa is the lead for him. I would give Iowa a 60 to 70% chance of landing him. Brad Fitzgibbon. Iowa offered him late. He's from the same school as John Nestor. I think he's got a great physique, great potential on the defensive line, probably more of a D tackle. He is considering Kansas, Michigan State, and maybe one or two others, but the most recent crystal ball has Iowa highly favored to land him. I think Iowa will land him. I'm giving Iowa a 90% chance of landing him. And continue their excellent production in the state of Illinois. Christian Hudson, I think Iowa, his recruitment's been kind of quiet. I think Iowa has as good a chance as anybody in this recruitment, especially Kelvin Bell. The fact that Iowa has done so good at the defensive line position, I would give Iowa a 40% chance. I would say that it's hard to say who's in the lead, but Iowa. It's not a clear situation where Iowa is clearly not in the lead. Okay, I wouldn't call it that. On 3, they have Iowa and Maryland favored to land him. So, take that for what it's worth. Maybe I'll pull up on 3 here to wrap this up momentarily. And lastly, we have Charles Bell and Maguire Richmond. Maguire Richmond was a pretty recent offer. He's the brother of Mason Richmond. I think Kansas State currently is probably in the lead for him, especially considering Iowa already has 2 really, really nice linebacker commits. But it looks like they're willing to take a third because they really like him. They like the connection that he has with his brother. Iowa definitely has a tendency to give the benefit of the doubt to legacy type recruits that they know come from a good family, come from a good background, and will come to Iowa and do things the Iowa way. So I would say Iowa is neck and neck. It's a toss-up really between them and Kansas State, maybe with a slight edge to Kansas State. And lastly, the lone running back visit. Well, actually, not lastly. I'll talk about Yosei Epinesa, a.k.a. Iose Epinesa. Kentrell Reinhardt, it's another one that I don't have a really, really good feel for. I think Iowa has a really good chance. There's some nice competition here between Syracuse, NC State, and Minnesota. Um, you know, Liddell Betts will get his shot. I think Iowa has a legitimate chance here. Um, Iowa has Caleb Johnson, who's from the state of Ohio. Uh, you, they have a shot. I'll put it to you that way. He's going to be visiting Iowa on June 19th. And it looks like NC State will be getting his last official visit. That's the only thing. If Iowa was his last official visit, I would say that I felt really good about Iowa's chances of landing him. So unless Iowa is able to get him to commit before visiting, I think it's going to be an uphill battle, but they still have a chance. Hopefully Iowa can just get him to commit, within and not even take the official visit, but time will tell. Lastly, Yossi Epinesa. I would say Iowa is definitely in the lead for him. They did a really good job on his official visit. Really good job, but they have obviously some stiff competition. And the problem sometimes with legacy recruits is the things that would help you are actually working against you. And sometimes recruits will get in their head too much and say, well, I don't want to be compared to my brother. I don't want to be compared to my dad. I want to be my own guy, which is fair, might be somewhat diluted, but it's fair for the most part. That is probably the main thing that I would say that Iowa is fighting against. But I would definitely say that Iowa is in the lead with Miami in a somewhat distant second. I would put Iowa, Miami, Penn State, and then Minnesota, and then or excuse me, Missouri, excuse me, and then Utah. That's if I had to give my ranking, my list of kind of how the tier, the where he has these schools in his head, that's what I would go. Iowa, Miami, Penn State, Missouri, Utah. All right, lastly, guys, let's take a look at On3 here, and let's see if there's any updated if there's any updated uh prediction machine polls. I don't think they do, but we'll check it nonetheless. So here we go. As you guys can see, Nick Brooks is favored to land at Georgia. We'll see what happens there. Terrence Smith still in the lead for Iowa. Brock Heath and Lucas Algier are favored to land at Kansas State. Chris McCorkle was committed to Indiana. It'll be interesting he was, when I did a recent video, I said that he was committed to Indiana, which was kind of a surprise to me. He decommitted. So I would be curious to see if he ends up still visiting Iowa, considering he decommitted from Indiana. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but we'll see. Um, and again, On3 is higher on some of these guys than 247 Sports is. Terrence Smith, for one, Burt Goucher, and Carson Cooney, who Iowa has commitments from. They consider them borderline 4-star to full blown 4 stars. I mean, they have Carson Cooney as a mid level 4-star. So, they have, as I told you, Joshua Guerrier. They have USF and Pitt as the favorites. They also have Joey Van Wetsing as an 89 borderline 4-star on the offensive line as opposed to the defensive line. They don't have Brad Fitzgibbon's thing updated here, but on 247 Sports, there are predictions for Brad here. I'll get this pulled up if I can find him. There he is. If I can find you. Two predictions, not just the Hawkeye insiders, but two guys here. So that's good. And they're pretty confident about it. They have a 7. So to answer what I said earlier, considering everything, a case by case basis and what we've seen in years past, I would give Iowa to me, what would be considered good is if they're able to land 9 to 11 guys from this official visit weekend. They can obviously land more, they can obviously land less. And I think it's very reasonable that they land more. I don't think they're going to hit at a 90% rate like they did last year, but you know, I think they can go upwards of like 14 or 15 with the exception of like 3 or 4 guys. But I think what I would consider successful is if they land, you know, 9 anywhere from 9 to 11. I think that would be pretty good. Now if it's 9, it depends on which 9 guys it is. Is it 9 and it includes Yossi Epinesa and Nick Brooks? Well, I guess they have 21 if you count these two guys. So with that in mind, if we're including these two guys and not just I was more just thinking the major recruiting weekend, but if you consider it as a whole, I think what would be considered successful is Iowa lands between 10 and 13 guys. Okay. But if we're just talking the official visit weekend, I would say between 9 and 11. So, all right, guys, that's pretty much it. There's also CJ Bell here. I don't see him on 247 Sports, though, which he was. Oh, there he is, Charles Bell. I think Iowa has a good chance with him. He's from the state of Connecticut. Actually, I think Iowa definitely would be in the lead for him. They don't have any cornerbacks committed currently. I think the main competition is Rutgers, honestly. But, but they're in excellent position for him. So, and then realistically for this class, what I am envisioning as an end ranking that I would consider successful is if Iowa can finish in the top 35. I think that's doable, especially if they land Yossi Epinesa. I've told you guys in the past that how good or not good Iowa's class is depends usually on 1 or 2 guys. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching my official visit weekend preview. Love you guys. Thank you guys so much for all you do. Be sure to smash the subscribe button. At the very least, like, comment, share. You guys know the drill. I would love for the channel to get up to 2,000 subs by the end or by the start of the next football season. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow and facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.